Ever wonder when to use a static mesh instead of a brush in Real Engine? Today I'll show you exactly how to turn a brush into a static mesh, tweak its geometry, fix the materials and adjust the pivot so your levels looks cleaner and work better. If you want more tutorials like this plus strategies to build a career in games, hit like, subscribe and check out my free webinar, How to Become a Game Changer Game Creator After Your Daily Job. Don't wait for the perfect time, it is time to take the leap. To start, we are going to check that we have the plugins that are needed. Look for Modeling and confirm that you have the Static Mesh Modeling mode and also the Modeling Tools Editor mode. Select this one. I know that you have to restart. The other that we have to check is the UV Editor, which we have at this moment. Now restart your project. The next step is to start with something pretty simple, which are the geometry actors. In the geometry actors, the most basic that you have is the box. You can see it here. And when you are working with geometries, and in that case, I'm referring to the brush actors, you can play a lot with that because you can transform this whatever you want. In fact, let me adjust these to 100. Place again the actor. Fantastic. And as I was mentioning, you can play with this actor whatever you want. It's pretty simple, and that's one of the greatest advantages of using the brush type actors. Now I want to create a copy of this actor and move it to one side. Select the actor, Alt and drag to create a new one. Now I want to transform this actor into a static mesh. Let's pick the selection, and with this actor selected, the box brush 2, go to Details and move down to the section of Brush Editing, click Advanced, and here you have the option of Create a Static Mesh. Click it. I want to add a new folder for my static meshes, and let's give a name to that, Box 1. And create a static mesh. Now we have that static mesh. Now we have that static mesh in our folder. The good thing about creating static meshes over brush, one of the good things, is that now I can use that static mesh in other scenes. Different to the brushes belongs to your current level or your current scene. At the same time, keep in mind that the processing that you require for static meshes is much lower than using the brushes. The brushes are when you are prototyping a level and you are testing that things are working. But once you test that, you need to move to static meshes. The next step is about modeling this static mesh. We mentioned a second ago that when we are using brushes, that process is pretty simple. But with static meshes, you need to learn an extra thing. In the selection mode, select Modeling. We're going to use that tool when we are changing static meshes. You have several options here, but the first one you need to know is the attributes. When you select an object and you click the Inspect, you can see what is the structure of the geometry that this mesh has at this moment. And you can realize that there are faces that includes 2 triangles, which is the most basic structure you can do in terms of geometry. And it's important because if you want to stretch one of the sides, the structure of a triangle helps you to solve several issues that will present to you in the future. Now let's say that I want to add a face here all around this polygon. Having selected the static mesh, go to Model. And in Model, select Polygroup Edit. You will have a notification on the top at this moment, because this is coming from a brush actor, that says this object has only a single polygroup. Use the Group Gen, Group Point, or Tricep to create polygroups. To create a polygroup, the only thing you gotta do is to move back to Attributes and select the option Generate Polygroups, and then Accept. Now let's go back to Model and Polygroup Edit. I recommend you to go crazy and experiment with all tools that you have. But at this moment, because I want to add some geometry here, I want to insert edge loop. Click on it. And now you can see if I move the mouse that I can add an extra loop around this structure. The same thing will happen if I move to this corner. Now I want two of this and I want to be proportional to the sides. In that case, I will use the position mode and select even. This will make a division of this static mesh into objects that has the same size. Now I want to add two loops. So click here, add two, and now when I move, you can see that we have two loops. Click to set them, and immediately you can have also other two loops in the section that the other section that you just generated. At this moment, this is what I want. So done. Accept. And now you can go to the attributes, inspect, and you will see that your object is a little bit different. Now you have more triangles than what you used to have. More triangles and more geometry means more processing time. So you always want to be aware about the amount of triangles you have. And if you can reduce that amount, even better. Sometimes when you go to the inspect, there might be a triangle, let's say this triangle, that you want to rotate to move to this direction. Because let's say that you want to extrude this section or this edge. If you do it, then it's going to look different here than what will be here. In that case, you want to have the same corresponding mirroring look of the triangle to this side. So how can you turn this triangle? Click on Mesh, look Triangle Edit, select only a filter for edges, so you can pick only this triangle. And now click where it says Flip. Now you have a triangle that is a mirror to this one. And if you go to Attributes and Inspect, you can see the final result. But I added extra sides to this geometry, extra geometry, because I want to play with this structure. If not, I can reduce this to the minimum of two triangles on this side and two triangles on every side. Click on Model and now Polygroup Edit. I want to take this side and move it a little bit out. I want to take this one too and move it a little bit out. And also on the top, I'm going down to look something like this. Here is when you working on static meshes, you have a great power because you can do that when you're using brushes. You need to extrude and create more geometry. You cannot just take what you have and then play with this. Not in the case of adding new elements to the geometry. What I discovered throughout my years of experience working with these two tools is that because I practice a lot with them, I realize when I can use one or use another. And usually the process is I try to go to the brush actors and do prototyping really fast. But then once I move to the static meshes, then I can go to the details. I want to add some materials to explain what is going to happen here better. So go to Content, right click, go to Add Import, add Feature Content Pack, and add the starter content that is offered by Unreal, and that includes a lot of materials. Add to project, cancel, and here is your static content. And inside that you have a lot of materials that you can use. I will use this brick clay new, and let's drag it inside our static mesh. Doing a quick inspection of this material as it is added to the object, you might realize that this is crazier than Willy Wonka on a chocolate overdose. This is insane. So we have to fix that. That's the next step. First, let's adjust the UVs. Select the object, go to UVs, and click UV Unwrap. You can see here that there are sections when you're presenting the unwrapping that they are not exactly good, like this section with this section. It makes no sense to place them like that. On the top is looking good. Well, no, it's not looking good. Look at this section. So you need consistency with this checkers structure that is presented to you. So let's cancel this And having selected the object, go to Auto UV. And in Auto UV, select, instead of the method Patch Builder, the one named XAtlas. This is the one that I use the most. And you can immediately see the difference. Everything makes sense makes sense on every side of this object. This is the first step. Now accept. But the craziness is not yet done. Now we have a size for this material that is out of scale. That's the second step. Once more, we will select UVs, but now we pick Transform UVs. Select one of your sides, and you have now these options to adjust the side of your material. So let's start with this one. Let's reduce it. In fact, in these cases, I like to not having the scale here. I want to be free to do this to my taste. And let's reduce it like that until you have a scale that you are looking for. Once you define this for this side, you're going to repeat the process for this one. You can also rotate your material. In my case, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. In fact, I'm going to rotate it to the other side. And now adjust to the side that I wish. Something like that. And then, as you play with these two sides and the sizes of these sides, then you can also adjust the position. Yeah, let me move it here. I just want to adjust it a little bit more and make the scale, make sense for both of them. And then you can continue applying this process for every one of your sides until you feel that your object is looking good. This is my final object with adjustments for the bricks and the position and the scale. And now I can go to the static meshes and add more objects like this one. But as you can see at this moment, I don't have the material because I haven't assigned this material to it. One option I could have is to use the material and just drag it and drop it here. But probably you want to have that object defined with the material. In that case, we'll go to the static mesh, open your static mesh. Let's move it to one side because I want to find the material that I use for this one. Select this material and now assign the material to the static mesh, to the original static mesh. Click here. The material is assigned. Save it. You can close your static mesh. And now if you check your static mesh, it already has that material. And not only that, now you can go to the starter content. Let's look for another material. Let's say this brick clay beveled. I can drag it here and you will see that the same proportions will be kept for the other material. So now I can change the materials without problems and the size and the rotation will apply the same. And one extra small thing I want to fix is that when you add the static mesh, you can see that it is like inside the earth. That is because the pivot is on another position, not in reference to the bottom of this static mesh. To solve that issue, just select your static mesh, go to Xform, Edit Pivot, and select Center and Bottom. Now accept. Of course, we move the pivot and now we move it for all the other static meshes. But now, when you add a new object, let me remove this one and add a new one. There you will see just over the surface. And that's how you can turn a brush into a static mesh, modify its geometry, fix the materials, and adjust the pivot to get a cleaner, more flexible assets in Unreal Engine. If this tutorial helped you, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment with your questions or wins. I always read them, and your feedback helps me create more content for you. And if you are serious about moving from the hobbyist to a professional in the gaming industry, check out my free webinar, How to Become a Game Changer Game Creator After Your Daily Job. You will learn the strategies and steps I use to help aspiring devs build both skills and careers in the gaming industry. Until next, keep creating, keep sharing, and most importantly, keep dreaming big. I'll see you soon, my fellow creators.